This is Nikkei Meets, and I want to talk about my experience in starting a language exchange club and some of the lessons I learned from that. In 2003 I started a Japanese-English language exchange club in Vancouver, Canada, and basically how I arranged it is that it's a little bit of a problem when you have an unbalanced problem, and I'd kind of seen this issue happen before in Vancouver, where there were actually more people wanting to learn English than there were Japanese. And so I originally had in mind a way to sort of balance that, but also make it fair, so that teachers of Japanese would be rewarded, on an amateur level for their volunteering and teaching Japanese. So essentially, how it worked is, every lesson had a teacher, a main teacher, and that person was responsible for taking attendance, setting the topics, and conducting the lesson. And even if it's just conversation, it basically means leading the conversation. So the groups were never more than 4 people. So in an ideal situation, actually, a lot of them were one-on-one when we had perfect matches. But we never had situations where there was like 1 to 4, 1 to 5 kind people, or if people came late, they could talk amongst themselves, but it wasn't going to be an official lesson. It wasn't recorded in our record of lessons. So the instructor would have a sheet. They'd write down what the topics were and who was in attendance, and then they would submit that at the end of it. The next thing that would happen is they would actually submit the lesson digitally onto our website, and then from there the lesson attendees could evaluate the lesson. And the lesson evaluations were very important, because they helped the lesson leaders or instructors to customize and adjust their lessons more to the desires of the participants. Now, to kind of address the imbalance problem, as I saw, what I did is I made it. I introduced a point system for doing lessons. So basically, everyone who conducted a lesson got 10 points, which was basically equivalent to $10, $10 in credit, and everyone who received a lesson expended 15 points. So there was a sort of a semi-profit motivation built into this, and we did have people asking to be teachers and never wanting to receive lessons so that they could get more points. But over time, people who were serious about it, appreciated that was just a sort of a fancy fee collection system, and they didn't mind basically paying. It would work out to paying $5, for basically for 2 hours. They pay 15 to get one language lesson, and they get back 10 to give a language lesson, kind of thing. So, and there was also a obviously, if there was a 3-to-1 ratio, then our our profit margin would increase, but it's still very small in the scheme of things. And I think that the focus on quality that we had justified those kinds of collection of fees. So now by conducting these sort of satisfaction surveys after every lesson, immediately people go there because they're excited about learning languages, but then people also go there people go there for a variety of reasons. Some of it is that they're want to learn the language, and so instructing is just a sort of the price to pay. But they don't sort of heed a lot of at first, particularly they don't really think a lot about their role as an instructor going into the exchange lesson. However, some of the people there were actually looking for experience in teaching, and so these people were particularly they got a lot of benefit out of the teaching side. In fact, some people didn't even care to receive lessons. They and in that case, we didn't actually have a sort of a payroll mechanism, so they just accumulated points, and we never were actually able to really reward them. Anyway, but then so I think one of the things about it was that the whole point about an exchange lesson is that it's an amateur, it's amateurs teaching each other, and a lot of at that time in Vancouver, I mean the ESL market was heavily saturated, and a lot of the kind of advertising that you saw for English classes, English conversation classes, were like, our instructors are professional, university students who are, being trained in, education, teaching English as a foreign language, and they were all competing to try to be, who's the best professional kind of thing. And at Genki Circle, we kind of did the opposite, which is that we're all amateurs, but that we're a structured club of amateurs, and we offer quality conversation and basically engagement with the target culture in order to improve your language ability. So, and we managed to do that. So, for instance, when some of the reviews started to roll in, we had one Japanese language instructor who was actually formally trained in teaching, Japanese as a second language, and her classes were actually not getting that high reviews. One of the things that she was doing was she was teaching the lessons in English and teaching lots of theory, and a lot of the Canadian students who were coming to learn Japanese had already gotten this theory at university and really just required, being engaged in the foreign language and not being lectured at more. So they gave honest reviews. They gave her points for effort, but in terms of sort of satisfaction, they really weren't that happy with the lessons. Whereas we had another instructor who, her former profession was actually working as a hostess in hostess clubs in Japan, and what that did is it gave her an ability to really engage her clients and really get information from them, and it was that kind of extracting of information from the students that motivated them to really speak and try to express themselves. And they got a lot out of that, and they gave her really high reviews. And so the professional Japanese instructor quickly learned from that, and she started teaching in Japanese and adjusting. She still had sort of theoretical grammar lessons and things like that to try to hone up on her professional Japanese teaching experience that she wanted to get. But she realized that in the context of a language exchange club that she really needed to be operating in a different way. And so this structure that we provided, to give evaluation and to compare ideas and brainstorm on the best way to do Language Exchange Club allowed her to adjust her teaching style. And so we improved the quality of Japanese lessons all around like that. And the same thing was true for English. People, Canadians who were, maybe they were chatterboxes and they just like to talk on and on and on, provided a certain amount of kind of listening experience for their partners or their students. But they, at the end of the lesson, if you would ask them to write a report on what was talked about, they all they could do is remember what they talked about, because they were pretty much while talking the whole time, and those instructors also tended to get less than favorable results, where it was the kind of guys who said, oh, could you please, like when they hear the Japanese English and they don't understand what's being said, instead of just assuming something or going on, saying, I'm sorry, what did you say? Make them repeat themselves and really engage them to actually extract information out of the English learners. That again, the same thing happened, that the English learners were much more satisfied with these kinds of lessons and gave their instructors more positive results. So through this we had a pretty successful formula worked out, and as a person who learned Japanese from scratch myself and made use of these kinds of amateur lessons, and really, I taught it myself. I'm self-taught. I've heard the disparaging things saying about people who are self-taught before, that their professors are fools or something, but I actually disagree with that. I think that teaching yourself with help is really the only way to learn. And if that help is through a university professor or through a textbook or the internet or an amateur volunteer language exchange club, it doesn't matter, because you make use of the resources that you have available to get the job done of learning the language. And once, when I was an English conversation teacher in Japan, I remember I had a student ask me if she would actually learn English coming to the class, and I didn't make the most Machiavellian decision when I answered her. I answered her totally truthfully, and I said to her, listen, if you can generate an hour's worth of questions through your own self-study and then bring those questions to me and we go through them once a week, then yes, these lessons will really help you learn English and get ahead in it. And unfortunately, she stopped coming back after that, but I think that maybe she just discovered she wasn't that interested in English. And I think that I think that really people who are passionate about learning and teaching are only really interested in working with people who are serious about it anyway. So so that's my experience on a little bit on language learning and teaching and amateur language exchange clubs. This is Nick Edmeades. Thank you.